Welcome back to Econ Weekly, your go-to source for what's happening in the world of economics, tailored just for students and young economists. In this episode for June 24th to 30th, 2025, we'll cover key global monetary moves, Pakistan's new budget and economic outlook, and what all this means for you as a student of economics. Let's begin with the global stage. China kept its interest rate steady, playing it safe after last month's easing. India made headlines by slashing its interest rate by 50 basis points to boost economic activity. Switzerland cut its key rate all the way to 0%, signaling concerns about deflation. Meanwhile, the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Bank of England held their rates firm, citing inflation and global risk factors. Now, let's pause for a moment and understand. Why are central banks making such different choices? This is a perfect opportunity to apply the models you've studied in class. ISLM model in action. Think of the ISLM model. When a country cuts interest rates, the LM curve shifts right. That means lower interest rates and more investment, pushing GDP higher. In India and Switzerland, lower inflation means more room to stimulate growth by moving that LM curve right. But in the US and UK, inflation is still high, so they leave rates unchanged, keeping their LM curve where it is.
Pause and sketch this.
What happens to equilibrium GDP in each case? Taylor rule logic. The Taylor rule helps central banks decide the right interest rate based on inflation and GDP gaps. For example, India has low inflation and a big output gap. Taylor rule says cut rates. The US has moderate inflation and output gap. Taylor rule says hold. Switzerland has deflation risk cut to 0. Try calculating it for yourself using this formula. This is how theory meets reality. Back to Pakistan, where the state bank decided to keep its rate at 11%. Inflation is low, but external shocks like oil prices keep them cautious. In the new budget, total spending is down 7%, but defense spending is up by 20%. That's 2.55 trillion rupees. The government hopes for 4.2% GDP growth next year, aided by IMF programs. Think like an economist. Would you prioritize defense or social development? This is the classic guns versus butter dilemma in public finance. Let's talk trade and risks. Pakistan's trade deficit with Gulf nations has widened, up to $12.4 billion due to oil imports. The privatization of PIA is moving forward, with 5 serious bidders in the race. Meanwhile, Careem will exit Pakistan in July, citing harsh market conditions, a troubling sign for Pakistan's digital economy. And in a serious development, India has ended its participation in the Indus Waters Treaty, raising long-term concerns for Pakistan's agriculture and food security. This is where economics meets geopolitics and resource management. Think water scarcity, rural livelihoods, and migration pressures. So what can you, as an economics student, learn from this week? You're watching ISLM and Taylor rule models in real time. Pakistan's budget lets you study fiscal priorities under constraints. The trade deficit ties directly to the balance of payments chapter. The water conflict? A real-world case in resource economics and political economy. That wraps up this week's edition of Economics Weekly. If you learned something new, hit like, share with your classmates, and subscribe for more real-time economics made simple.